Joining us now, William Brennan, former attorney for the Trump Organization, who represented Trump during his second impeachment trial. William, thank you so much for taking the time. Blanche isn't ruling out Trump testifying. Is there a scenario where you actually see this happening?
Good morning, Anna, and thanks for having me. You know, I've been trying criminal cases for about 35 years around this country, and I can tell you, regardless of whom the defendant is, it is the absolute last decision that is made in a trial. Prosecution puts its case on. The defense will then argue at the conclusion of the prosecution's case that it should be dismissed, that it doesn't even meet a prima facie, a very low burden. Most of those motions are denied. Then if the defense, and the defense has no obligation on it, they can sit there and do the crossword puzzle during this trial. But if the defense decides to call any witnesses, say they called 1 or 10 witnesses, at the end of that trail of witnesses, it would be the decision-making time for the defendant. And my prediction is that in this particular case, the defendant will not testify.
If he did, though, how would you prepare him? What types of questions would you expect prosecutors to ask on cross-examination?
Well, the problem with President Trump in the defendant's chair is he's had a very high-profile life before he was president. He was a mogul, a business mogul. He was in the media. He had the reality shows. He had The Apprentice. His private life was the subject of headlines and magazines. Then he was the most powerful man in the world for 4 years and made a lot of public statements. So there's so much that could dovetail into this case that would provide fodder for cross-examination that most likely the benefits of any testimony would be outweighed by the exposure you'd have on cross. But aside from that, that's just a general statement on having a former president as a criminal defendant. Aside from that,
not any
I don't know
criminal,
that he needs to.
Not any former president either as a criminal defendant. I mean, Donald Trump is a unique person when it comes to his communications and his life.
That's true, but anybody who's spent their life in the public arena and then became president, you know, there's only a handful of people that have ever done that, present a unique scenario for the defense. But put that aside. In this case, I don't think he needs to testify. You know, they've got to tie this case into another crime. They failed to really specify what the other crime is. Cohen said a few times, well, I know that this was done, if it was done, I know that this was done to help the campaign. I mean, does Cohen have the ring of truth? I mean, the man is a convicted perjurer. He's lied repeatedly to Congress, to the Internal Revenue Service, to the American people, to judges. You know, so he is a polluted source.
That is true.
Mr. Blanche.
That is true. However,
Mr. Blanche will finish with him tomorrow, I predict.
There is the corroborating evidence when it comes to the documents, when it comes to other witnesses who have testified that have also pointed to what was happening during the campaign when the Access Hollywood tape dropped and how this particular story from Stormy Daniels could have impacted the campaign. And so there's other evidence other than Cohen's testimony. But I wonder what you think of how the defense has handled this case. Former federal prosecutor and senior writer for Politico, Ankush Khardori, writes this: Trump's lawyers are pursuing a flawed and risky strategy. Why? Most likely it's not them, but him. Trump is the client, and he gets the final word on major decisions. So far as I can tell, this team has managed to stay on Trump's good side by indulging, perhaps necessarily, his worst traits and instincts. It may be their downfall. From your experience working with Trump, William, is this a fair analysis?
Yeah, I don't agree with that analysis at all. I had the experience in the second impeachment of representing the president, of course, with other lawyers. We were a team. And then I spent 8 weeks in this very courtroom in 15A with Judge Merchan and most of that prosecution team representing the Trump Payroll Corporation. President Trump was an easy guy to get along with. He'll push, but he listens to lawyers. These lawyers, Susan Nexos, whom I've worked with, Mr. Blanche, who by reputation is a tremendous lawyer. These lawyers are doing a great job. And just back to your point for a minute about the alleged corroboration. You know, we've got that one document that Mr. Weisselberg purportedly prepared. Where's Mr. Weisselberg? The defense could get up get a missing witness charge where the jury's charged that, if someone has not been called because they're unavailable or for whatever reason, you can take that into account in your deliberations. They don't have Mr. Weisselberg to corroborate Mr. Cohen's story of what happened. And it's interesting on it in this case that the $130,000 was as a result of Cohen getting a loan on his home, which he lied to his wife about. So there's a lot to work with here.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with President Trump being the defendant. If Joe Blow was the defendant, I'd feel the same way.
Well, I hope you'll come back so we can continue this conversation after we see more
I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
from the cross-examination. Thank you so much, William Brennan.